I never should have taken the job. It was supposed to be temporary, just a few weeks of night security at an old summer camp deep in the woods. Camp Hollow Pines had shut down years ago, after some kind of tragedy they never talked about in the job interview. I didn't ask. I needed the money. The first few nights were uneventful, boring even. The cabins were falling apart, their windows boarded up, the once lively mess hall now overrun with dust and cobwebs. My only task was to walk the perimeter, check the cabins for squatters, and make sure no one snuck onto the property. But then the fog rolled in. The fourth night, around 2 a.m., the entire camp became swallowed in a thick white mist. It was unnatural, so dense I could barely see my own hands. The flashlight beam barely cut through it, making the trees around me look like shifting, faceless figures. The silence was worse. No wind, no crickets, no rustling leaves. Just the heavy, suffocating quiet of something holding its breath. Then I heard it. A whisper. Not close. Somewhere out in the fog, just beyond the reach of my light. I froze. My pulse slammed in my ears. Hello? My voice barely carried in the heavy air. No response. But I felt it. That unmistakable sensation of being watched. The kind that prickles up your spine and roots you to the spot. I told myself it was the wind. That was easier than thinking something was out there. But that night, as I sat in the ranger station watching the security monitors, I saw movement. Cabin 6, the one furthest from camp, had a single window still intact. And in that window, something was looking back at me. A shadow. No features. No light reflecting in its eyes. Just a tall, dark figure standing motionless inside the locked, abandoned cabin. I grabbed my flashlight and ran. The cabin door was still locked when I got there. I hesitated before stepping onto the porch, my breath coming in short gasps. And then, a whisper, right behind me. I spun around, heart slamming against my ribs. No one, just fog. I fumbled with the keys, yanking the cabin door open. The smell hit me first, rotting wood, damp air, something sickly sweet underneath. My flashlight swept across the room. Dust floated in the beam, undisturbed for years. No footprints, no signs of life. Just a few broken bunk beds and a single overturned chair. But the window, the one where I'd seen the figure, was open. I shut it, hands shaking, and backed toward the door. I wanted to believe I had imagined it. But as I turned to leave, I saw something scratched into the wood near the window. 4 words. Don't listen to them. I bolted out of there so fast I nearly dropped my flashlight. Back at the ranger station, I locked the door, shut the blinds, and tried to shake the feeling of something watching me from the trees. I told myself I'd finish the job, collect my last paycheck, and never come back. Then the radio crackled. It was an old 2-way unit, barely working. I hadn't used it once. But now, static hissed through the speaker, breaking the silence of the room. And underneath the static, a voice. Low, whispering. You shouldn't be here. I grabbed the radio, my hands slick with sweat. Who is this? Silence. Then, laughter. Not normal laughter. Twisted, distorted, like it was being played in reverse. I dropped the radio and backed away. The lights flickered. The temperature in the room dropped so suddenly that my breath came out in a pale mist. And then I heard it again. A whisper. Right outside the station. I stood frozen, staring at the door. The handle jiggled. Once. Twice. Then a single knock. Slow. Deliberate. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. Another knock. Then just outside the window, the fog shifted. And in the pale, ghostly light, I saw it. The same tall, dark figure from cabin 6. No features, no eyes. Just an impossibly thin silhouette standing inches from the glass. It raised one hand and placed it against the window. My body finally obeyed. I stumbled backward, nearly tripping over the chair. The thing didn't move. It just stood there, as if waiting. Then, without warning, the whispers surrounded me. Not from the figure, from inside the room. Dozens of voices, hissing, murmuring, laughing. I felt something cold brush against my arm. I swung blindly with the flashlight. Nothing was there. I couldn't take it anymore. I ran. I didn't stop until I was in my car, tearing down the narrow dirt road as fast as I could. I didn't care about my paycheck, I didn't care about my job. I just needed to leave that place behind. But as my headlights cut through the fog, I saw them. Figures. Dozens of them. Lining the road on either side. Tall, thin, faceless. Standing still as I sped past. Watching me. When I finally reached the highway, the fog broke. The air was clear again. The world felt normal. Safe. I never went back. But sometimes late at night I still hear the whispers. And I know they never really let me leave. I never feared mirrors. They were just another part of life. Something to check before heading out, to adjust my makeup, to make sure my hair wasn't a disaster before an early morning meeting. I never thought twice about the one in my bathroom. A simple rectangular mirror mounted above the sink, slightly worn at the edges. It had been there since I moved into my apartment 3 years ago. But lately, something felt off. It started subtly. At first I barely noticed. Just a flicker in my peripheral vision, a brief lag in my reflection when I turned my head too quickly. I chalked it up to exhaustion. Work had been brutal, and I was running on caffeine and sheer willpower. Maybe my eyes were just playing tricks on me. Then it got worse. One night, as I was brushing my teeth, I dropped my toothbrush. As I bent down to grab it, I saw something strange in the mirror. My reflection hadn't moved. For a fraction of a second, it just stood there staring back at me. Then, smoothly, almost too smoothly, it mimicked my movement, bending down a beat too late. A shiver ran through me. I shook my head, trying to laugh it off. Maybe I was just tired. Maybe I imagined it. I told myself that. I needed to believe that. But deep down, something about it felt wrong. The smile. The next night I decided to test it. I stood in front of the mirror, making small, sudden movements, tilting my head, blinking rapidly, lifting my arm at odd angles. For the most part, my reflection copied me exactly. But every now and then, there was the tiniest delay, just a half-second lag, enough to make my stomach twist. And then, just as I was about to turn away, it smiled. I didn't. I wasn't smiling. My breath caught in my throat. The grin on my reflection's face was wrong, stretched too wide, too deliberate. Like it was amused. Like it knew something I didn't. I stumbled backwards, slamming into the bathroom door. My reflection simply stood there, grinning. I reached for the light switch with a shaking hand and flicked it off. Darkness. For a long time, I just stood there, heart hammering, too afraid to move. When I finally forced myself to turn the light back on, my reflection was normal again. But I didn't trust it anymore. The watching. After that night, I avoided the mirror as much as possible. I kept my eyes down when washing my hands, brushed my teeth in the bedroom, and got ready for work without glancing at my reflection. But I felt it watching me. The sensation of eyes boring into me from the other side of the glass never faded. I started covering the mirror with a towel at night, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still there, lurking just beneath the surface. Then, things escalated. I started waking up in strange positions, on the floor, half out of bed, once even in the hallway outside my apartment. My sheets would be crumpled, my pillows tossed across the room, as if I'd been thrashing in my sleep. And then there were the bruises. Dark, finger-shaped marks on my arms, my shoulders. I had no memory of how they got there. I was losing my mind. the other me. One night, unable to sleep, I sat up in bed and glanced toward the bathroom. The door was ajar, and in the dim light I could see the edge of the mirror and my reflection. I hadn't moved. I was still in bed, but in the mirror, I was standing, every muscle in my body locked in place. The reflection of me, the other me, stood just inside the bathroom, staring, watching. Its head tilted slightly, its lips curled in that same eerie smile. I couldn't breathe. It raised one hand slowly, deliberately, and pressed its palm against the inside of the mirror, like it was testing the boundary. I scrambled out of bed, heart pounding, and grabbed the nearest thing I could, a book from my nightstand. With a desperate cry, I hurled it at the mirror. The glass shattered. Shards rained down onto the sink, the floor. My heart pounded in my ears. I stood there panting, waiting, praying for whatever had been inside to be gone. But then, from the other side of the broken mirror, I heard it. A whisper. "Let me out." I turned and ran. The cracks. I didn't sleep that night. I booked a hotel room across town and tried to convince myself that I was imagining things. That stress, exhaustion, and paranoia had twisted my perception of reality. But when I returned to my apartment the next morning, I found the mirror completely intact. No sign of the shattered glass, no cracks, like it had never been broken. And when I dared to look into it again, there was a crack in me. A faint hairline fracture ran down my reflection's face, a thin, dark line from forehead to chin. But I couldn't feel it. There was nothing wrong with my real face, only the one in the mirror. I turned away, bile rising in my throat. The final night. I should have left. I should have burned the apartment to the ground and never looked back. But something kept me there. Maybe curiosity. Maybe stupidity. Maybe it wanted me to stay. That night I woke to the sound of my bathroom door creaking open. Cold air slithered across my skin. I didn't move, didn't breathe. My eyes darted toward the mirror, and I saw her, my reflection, standing at the foot of my bed, watching me. My body wouldn't respond. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. She took a step closer, then another. The room around me tilted, the air growing thick, suffocating. She leaned down, her lips inches from my ear, and in my own voice she whispered, "You don't belong here anymore." Then, blackness. Gone, I woke up the next morning, gasping for air. But something was wrong. The apartment felt different. The air was heavier, the shadows longer, my movements slow, delayed. I stumbled to the bathroom, gripping the sink to steady myself. My reflection stood there, staring back. At first, everything seemed normal. Then slowly she smiled, and behind the glass she lifted a hand and waved. I reached out to touch the mirror, and my fingers passed right through. I wasn't on the outside anymore. I was trapped. She turned away, walking out of view, out of my apartment, taking my life with her. I pounded against the glass, screaming, but no one could hear me. No one ever would, because I wasn't real anymore. I was just a reflection, and she was free.